Hello, everybody, and welcome to week 4 of BA231. This week will look a lot like the other weeks. We'll have a lecture, some homework, a discussion, some lecture, and a homework. So let's go through our module 4 and talk about what is due. You'll see your checklists and objectives, and then here is the discussion. Let's look at that and talk about that for just a second. So our discussion this week deals with inventory costing methods. Which one do you feel is best? And which one do you think gives you the most realistic picture of your inventory in a company? I am indifferent to which one you pick. You'll see that there's LIFO, FIFO, and weighted average. They all have their pros and cons, so you can pick whichever one you honestly feel is best. Just be sure to defend it. And then as we talk about it as a class, be sure to comment on your other classmates' posts. If they bring out something that's good or interesting that you haven't thought about, elaborate on that. If there's something that you might think that they're missing, respectfully say, hey, I can see where you're coming from, but what about this? Let's try to have a good open discussion about this. This is one of my favorite topics because we generally have a lot of good discussion. And as you're going through, try to use examples. Think about a grocery store, for example. Should they use FIFO or LIFO? Well, when it comes to fruits and vegetables, one's probably pretty obvious. But then let's think about a company that is selling gravel. Should they use FIFO, LIFO, or weighted average? It's kind of hard to do FIFO or LIFO sometimes, depending on how you store the stuff. So there's lots of practical applications out there that we can think about. So that is the discussion. You'll have your lecture again this week after you watch this. Again, please be sure to elaborate on what we've talked about and give some examples so I can make sure that I can see that you're watching the lecture. And then we will have the assignment. So I want to dig into this one. This assignment, I actually think these assignments are kind of fun this week. There's a lot of useful information that you'll see in here, but then also just the way that the templates are built and the things that we're covering are kind of fun to me. I know I'm an accountant, probably not as fun for everybody, but I really do like them. Hopefully you'll enjoy them too. So our first one here is in 17.2a, and this is going to be dealing with the inventory methods. So on 17.2a, if you want to turn there in your books with me, we can look at that. And as we go through this one, you're going to see the 3 different methods. And if you want, maybe look at this one a little bit before you post to your initial discussion post. You do your initial discussion post by Wednesday. Maybe this will give you a little bit of some information and some background on it. So what you're going to want to do here is you're going to be computing the inventory costs under the different valuation methods and applying the lower cost or market method rule. So I've built all of the templates here for you to help you come up with some examples. The first thing you're going to want to do here is figure out your total number of units. And again, the cells in yellow will have some helpful information for you. So your beginning inventory is 220 units. You can see it says right there at the top. Your unit cost is 117. So your total cost is $25,740. I've gone through and I've programmed formulas with all of this. So you purchase, and then on May 10th, you purchased 160 units. At 115 on August 18th, you got 230 at 114, and then on 10/1 you got 220 at 115. So your total is $95,660. So let's go through your different methods here. Your first one you'll be looking at is right here. So I've given you some examples you're going to take this one here and you're going to look at it from the method, and you're going to have your 220 units that you sold there. So you'll have your FIFO, LIFO, weighted average. Everything will be walking through, or that'll walk you through everything there. And then your numbers here, you'll have your cost, and you want to figure out your lower of cost or market. You have to figure out your units that you're using and your cost. And then once you have that, you're going to decide which one is lower cost or market. And again, I've given you some answers here to help. This one is hopefully pretty straightforward for you, and it's kind of fun. I don't think you should have any problems with that. Next, let's move on to 18.1a. This is a very practical problem, something that you will see all of the time. You might not be dealing with land, but you might be dealing with inventory. You might be dealing with clothing. You might be dealing with all sorts of stuff. But a spreadsheet like this, calculating numbers, is something that you will frequently do in jobs. So on this one here, on 18.1a, again, we are on page 6. Let's see, we are on page 627. So you're determining the cost to be capitalized for acquisition of an asset. So it gives you all of the information there just in that first paragraph. And then you need to compute the capitalized cost for the manufacturing plant, the land, and the land improvements. So as you read through here, what you're going to want to do is you're going to fill everything out. So I didn't put any numbers in here. I'll give you a couple as we're going through just to help you figure that out. But the construction of the manufacturing plant, as you read through, you'll see on the second to last line there, you had $5.2 million for building the cost of the new facility. So that's going to be $5.2 million. Oh, I forgot a zero. Forgetting zeros is something very easy to do in accounting. Make sure that you're watching as you're entering because that'll have a huge impact on the end. You'll see next week on your assignment. But as we get down here, you're going to see the purchase of the land when you're reading through there that on the second line from the top there that you purchased the new manufacturing plant site, the site for the new manufacturing plant for $3.4 million. So you have your $3.4 million there. So that's what you paid for it. And then you had to go through and then you had to, it says that you raised a building for $21,000. So basically you paid $21,000 to get rid of the building that was on site. But then you were able to go through and you'll have salvage value. Salvage value always plays a role in things. You got $14,000 from the salvage value. So you sold off lumber from it, metal, scrap metal, recycled, whatever it is. So basically, that cost you $7,000. Yes, it cost you $21,000 to destroy the building, but you made $14,000 from selling the parts that are left over. So you'll go through, you're going to add all of these up. Again, since you're watching this, I'll kind of give you a clue. That's going to be $3,520,800. And then down here, you'll have your cost of land improvements, which should be $270,700. And you'll have an analyze question at the end that you have to go over. So again, that one's not too bad. That one, as long as you're reading through and trying to match things up, I've given you some checkpoints. I think you'll be able to get that one. And then last is your critical thinking for 25.1. And this is a great cost-benefit analysis work exercise to see what is the best way for us to maximize our profits, looking at different product lines and things like that. So critical thinking 25.1 is on page 898. So as you go there, you're going to have a departmental closure. So Copper Gifts has 3 sales departments: wood crafts, clothing items, and paper goods. And then here's and you'll have their income statement. So these 3 areas right here, you'll want to fill all of those out. All of that information is given. It's right there in the condensed income statement. So this will be your $120,000. And again, I've given you formulas in yellow, so it should help populate as you go through. To get all of that figured out, you'll have your cost of goods sold, which gives your gross profit of $70,000, your direct operating expenses of $29,000, your indirect operating expenses of $12,000, and your net profit of $29,000. So as you go through, you'll see your woodcraft will add up to the $29,000, which is given. Clothing items is $16,000, and then your paper goods is $0. You're not making any money on paper goods. And then your totals over here will all add up. Your bottom line number here will be $45,000. Now you've got to go through and you've got to figure out, you're going to close the paper goods. So what you're going to want to do is, once you've entered all this, so let's just go through and we'll enter the profit here. So you're going to make $60,000 in sales. You're going to have $60,000 in sales from clothing, and then in paper goods you have $20,000. So your total sales is $200,000. Where students generally get lost is they're not exactly for sure what to put in these 2 columns. So it's fairly straightforward, so I just want to make sure that everybody sees that. So think about that. If you close the paper goods, you're basically getting rid of all of this right here. So your sales are going to drop down. They're not going to be $200,000 anymore, which is the 120 plus 60 plus 20. They are only going to be, they are going to decrease on that. So you're going to think, okay, well, that's going to be $180,000, right? That's what it would look like. But be sure to read, because as you go through, you're going to see in there it says, in the opinion of the owner, if the paper goods department is closed, a loss of $7,000 in sales could be lost by the woodcrafts department. So it's not the 180. It's going to be 173. So be sure to look at that and think, okay, maybe it's 180, but read all of those things. And what I did in my book when I was going through this and doing it, I went through and I would draw a line after every piece of information. So you'll see on the third line there, after the $17,000, where it's talking about indirect expenses could be reduced to $17,000, and then I have a line. So I know, okay, that's a separate piece of information. Then I read down to the next one, and after the $16,000, I drew a line because I knew every one of those pieces of information were going to be something that was critical. So as you go through, if you close your paper goods department here, I'll give you a clue. That is basically going to be about $4,500. This one is going to be $28,000, your bottom line number. Then you'll go through, you're going to do your questions here, and then your analyze portion. I have built formulas in here to help you figure out all of that. So that's this week's. It's not as complicated as some of the stuff that we've done in the past, as far as like filling out ledgers and journals and all of that, but it is very detail oriented, which is extremely important in accounting. So as you are going through, be sure to read all of the numbers, double check them, make sure that you've entered enough zeros or not too many zeros, that you're not leaving any numbers off, because that will have a big impact on things. So if you have any questions, reach out to me and let me know. Otherwise, good luck, and I will talk to you in the lecture next week. Thank you.